Today we're looking at one of the most important tarot decks of all time, outside of the Sicilian one, of course. Here we have the famous Rider-Waite tarot deck. It's another divination distortion of tarot's true purpose, gaming. The Rider-Wait for it, Smith deck, and its instruction manual have been bewitching cartomancy fans for over a century. Welcome to Playing Games, I'm Chris Kanuch. Please comment, like, and subscribe. If you do, I can foresee great games in your future. The Rider-Waite tarot deck, first published in 1909, represents a significant evolution in tarot history, and it has since become the go-to for most tarot readers. Arthur Edward Waite, a brainy mystic with a deep interest in the occult, teamed up with the artist Pamela Colman Smith to bring his vision of tarot to life. Waite and Smith were members in a cult known as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, or HOGD, a secret society with a focus on ritual magic, esoteric knowledge, and a terrible record of keeping their secrets secret. When Waite decided to revise the tarot, he was on a mission to imbue it with layers of mysticism, while also making it accessible for anybody wanting to use the cards for divination. Mission accomplished. But the real secret sauce to this deck wasn't the publisher, writer, or Waite himself. Rather, it was Waite's hand-selected artist, Pamela Colman Smith. When most of us picture what a tarot deck looks like, we picture this one. Pamela's illumination of both the triumphs and pip cards are a visual treat. You might notice that on this deck, we have a less common backing. These days, you'll probably see this blue and black plaid design, but the Tudor roses and lilies and pale blue pattern is the original 1909 design. Do you think I would show you anything but this 2002 reproduction of the original Pamela Colman Smith design? Of course I wouldn't, I respect you too much. Like all tarot decks, this deck has 5 suits: cups, wands, swords, pentacles, and the trump suit. Now, tarot cards prior to this deck, you'd mostly see the illustrations happening with the trump cards like these. The other suits have 4 face cards: the page, the knight, the queen, and the king. Those would be illustrated as well, but all the other cards below those would mostly just have objects: 6 swords, 7 swords, 8 swords, 9 swords, 10 swords, and so on. Pamela Colman Smith illustrated every single card in the whole deck. So you can see this suit like the suit of swords here, and there are definitely interpretations to be made in every single card. And the same goes in all 4 minor suits. Take the 4 of cups, for example. You have a cloud giving this guy the 4th cup. That's just bizarre and interesting and cool. I mean, the idea of mysticism is all through this deck. You have these just hands and arms appearing from nowhere. They're just being conjured up. Prior to this deck, a lot of other people would try to force meaning onto normal looking cards. Pamela did the opposite. She took those interpretations and drew them out on every single one of these cards. So now you have that clear representation of what these cards could be. Of course, this is not how tarot began. It's just a game of telephone, one person saying to the next that this is what these cards mean, and Pamela just taking that collective rumor mill and putting it into this deck. But she did it in a great way, and it's hard to deny how powerful these illustrations are. Do you want to know what each of these cards means? Check out this video and I'll tell you what A.E. Waite said they were. While left out of the original title, Pamela has now overshadowed her co-creator. Pamela was truly a free spirit, and her friends knew her as Pixie. She lived much of her childhood in Jamaica, where she fell in love with the Jamaican accent and local lore. Upon her return to England, she gained notoriety as an eccentric storyteller and artist, hosting gatherings where she would dress up in elaborate costumes and act out Jamaican folktales, complete with a miniature stage and with what we'd now call highly problematic accents. Her flair for the theatrics would come to influence her tarot designs, with each card feeling like a scene from a larger narrative, full of symbolism and emotion, as if every figure on the card were caught in a moment just before or after something big happened. Smith was also a spiritualist, claiming to be able to see and communicate with spirits. She frequently channeled her art while in trances, letting the other side guide her hand. It said that she would sometimes fall into a deep meditative state while listening to music, and then suddenly start drawing, producing intricate works seemingly out of nowhere. Was that too mean? Well, let's look at this card, the 10 of Wands, where a figure is struggling under the weight of 10 large sticks. Perhaps one of the cards she claimed came from a trance. However, it's identical to the Renaissance's Sola Busca deck. Another clear example is the 3 of Swords, where a heart is pierced by 3 swords. Smith, who worked at the British Museum, would have had access to their famous Sola Busca tarot deck. A lot of the poses in that deck found their way into the Rider-Waite Don't Tarot Me deck. But it's all good. I appreciate that she bridged the past with her present. That said, don't tell me that the spirits guided your hand unless you meant they also guided your hand to the tracing paper. I still think she was a genius artist who found inspirations beyond the Sola Busca deck. She drew from the bold, intricate line work of Aubrey Beardsley and the graphic flat perspectives of the Japanese ukiyo-e prints. the symbolic work of John Williams Waterhouse and the pre-Raphaelites. Adding to this was her background in theatrical design, where her time working with Ellen Terry and the Lyceum Theatre brought a staged, dramatic quality to her tarot cards, making each card feel like a snapshot from a mystical play. What set the Rider-Waite deck apart was its unprecedented focus on illustrating the Minor Arcana. This makes the whole deck, not just the Major Arcana, a pleasure to look at. Take the Nine of Swords, often called the Nightmare card, where a woman sits in bed, face buried in hands, with 9 swords hanging over her. While the card traditionally represents anxiety, Smith's version captures the raw, paralyzing fear of the subconscious mind. It's a scene so intimate and private that it feels voyeuristic. Smith also had a unique take on the Major Arcana. One of the significant departures in the deck's symbolism is the card the Lovers. Earlier decks would often show a pair in some state of romance or choice, but Smith's version portrays them as a direct nod to Adam and Eve, emphasizing moral choice and consequence. Here's one of the most famous cards in the deck, Il Matto, or the Fool. The Fool is a card often depicted as a carefree wanderer in earlier decks, but here, Smith's rendering adds an undercurrent of wisdom and foolishness, showing a young man blissfully walking toward the edge of a cliff, his dog at his side, a symbol of both instinct and loyalty. This Fool could represent the beginning of a journey, or the end of one if you don't watch your step or listen to your dog. Finally, let's look at the High Priestess card, a card that has been reinterpreted endlessly, but never quite like how Smith did it. Draped in robes and holding the Torah, this mystic woman sits between 2 pillars, embodying balance. Smith's design added a lunar element that connects the High Priestess not just to mysticism, but to the cycles of the moon, hinting at her as a keeper of secrets, both cosmic and personal. More so, it's long been thought of as her self-portrait. Waite's The Key to the Tarot, 1909, and its follow-up, The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, 1910, laid the groundwork for the deck's interpretations. While not the first to include a guidebook, this was perhaps the most widely spread deck, and with the inclusion of this How to Read the Cards book, more people than ever got on the tarot divination train. Just about anybody who had this book could claim they had the secret knowledge to read the cards and tell you your fortune, and try to make their own little fortune in the process. What's most tragic is that despite creating one of the most iconic tarot decks in history, its artist Smith never saw commercial success. Paid a flat fee for her work, she lived much of her life in poverty, and her contributions were long overlooked. Waite's name was plastered on the box, but hers wasn't. Still, her art lives on, and the Rider-Waite deck is now one of the most widely used tarot decks in the world, often referred to as the Rider-Waite Smith deck, in an effort to give her the recognition she always deserved. Whether or not you believe in silly fortune telling, the fate of this deck is certain. Its wonder and mystery will keep it in print for many more ages. A big thanks to Colin Snyder from Logos Divinier, who has helped me uncover the history and provided me with many of these amazing tarot decks. Check out his original one-of-a-kind tarot deck, linked in the description below. Please share, subscribe, and like to keep this channel going. You are great. See you next time on Playing Games.